All right, what is going on, everyone, and welcome back to the Mets Weekly Podcast. We are live at this very moment on YouTube and on X to recap this week's Mets versus Angels series, as well as a makeup game that was in St. Louis with this insane schedule, as well as all of the other news and rumors that have been going past the last few days in Mets land. But of course, we have to do it every single time, which is our usual house cleaning. And if you get annoyed by this, I'm sorry, I got to do it. I want to remind everybody to subscribe to the Mets Weekly YouTube channel if you have not already for this very podcast that is now recorded live on Sundays and on Thursdays. Today is Monday, so this is kind of an exception, but that's just kind of how the scheduling rolls. Excuse me, today is Tuesday. Never mind, I can't even read a fucking calendar. For those of you watching on playback and you want to join the conversation in the future, make sure to turn on those post notifications to know when we go live. For those of you in the live chat as of right now, we want to let you know that we do love reading your comments and your concerns and your questions and every single thing you got to say about this team. There is tons of it. If you feel like you're being ignored, you're not being ignored. They're just being starred throughout the show, and we'll try to pull up as many as we can to keep the flow of the conversation going. Also, make sure to follow Mets Weekly on Twitter or X or on TikTok, which mainly features Frank's instant reaction, who is here today with me. After every single Mets game, which is titled The Mets Frankly Postgame. For our audio listeners, make sure to follow us on any of your favorite listening platforms to not miss the audio version that goes up on 9 a.m. the following day after these episodes are recorded. So without further ado, let's get into number 71. Man, the numbers are getting up there for the episode count. But other than that, we are going into a series of Colorado after a disappointing series in Anaheim. And then if you want to say they swept the Cardinals because they were making this up from like a series back in May. So I guess you can say it's a sweep there. So there's your little bit of a redemption. But I can honestly say that I was disappointed. Very disappointed with how these stretch of games went. Frank, I think you probably feel the same way.
Yeah, I mean, the Angels, they stink. Let's not kind of beat around the bush. We're here to be brutally honest. And the Angels, they've been brutal for a long time now. And listen, there's no Mike Trout. Obviously, there's no Rendon. I mean, this is a team that's like 15 games under 500. The lineup that they're rolling out there, they're not really trying. The amount of errors the Angels make in the field, they're not really trying. And especially like the way it happened too, I feel like is the other frustrating aspect about it is that we talk so much all season long about bullpen. Oh, we got to get these solutions. We got to bring in new arms. And here's a new arm that we're excited about, and he just completely blows it. And then the following day, you're facing Griffin Canning, who by all accounts is one of the worst, absolute worst pitchers in the entire American League. And then you just hear the broadcast. Like, this is the thing that also drives me nuts. Oh, he pitched a good game. Oh, this is as good a game as I've seen him pitch. Every time that the Mets bats just go to sleep and don't come through and fail a million opportunities, it's, oh, well, the pitchers pitched such a good game. Oh, great pitching. But it's never, oh no, they squandered a bunch of opportunities. Oh no, this is an unacceptable performance by key guys. It's never that. Like, the Mets never play a bad game. Have you ever heard on SNY them say, oh, you know what, the Mets just didn't have it today. Oh, they just didn't hit well. It's, no, the pitcher was great. Oh, the defense on the other team was great. You see Pilar making diving catches. Oh my gosh, it's this amazing defense. Like, come on now. It's just like stuff like that when you're in such a tight wild card race. And you have San Diego's red hot, Arizona's red hot. You gotta win these games when you're facing these teams that are so brutal. And, we've seen it with the Marlins all year. Now you're doing it with the Angels. And it just feels like far too often the Mets just don't seem to do well against teams that they really should be beating up upon. Like, those are the kind of things that are really going to separate you in a very tight wildcard race when you're fighting so many other teams. So it's just been very frustrating that even though they've had plenty of good moments and plenty of good wins, and overall, like, they're still in it, they still have a good record, but they just have these golden opportunities a lot of times and just can't seem to fully capitalize and just make the most of it. and they would be firmly in that wild card if they did. And I think that's just kind of the really just annoying part about it. And it gets to the point where, you're going to a series in Colorado against a Colorado team that's been playing a lot better. Like, there were another example where when they played the Mets at Citi Field, Colorado had been playing really bad. Record was terrible. They beat the Mets plenty of times. So now they're going to Colorado when they're now actually playing well. And a lot of guys have kind of been able to. It seems like that Mets series got Colorado going because now Brenton Doyle's like the best hitter in the league, and a bunch of guys have been contributing for them. So now you're going into Coors Field against a Colorado team that's playing better. So when you look at the records and you're like, oh, the Mets should just win this series, it just doesn't feel like a guarantee right now, just with the way that they have failed opportunities. And it's frustrating from an offensive standpoint when you're getting a bunch of guys on base. So it's not like they're just playing all the way bad. It's like, no, like, you're right there. Like, you have guys on base, just cash them in. And they did it in St. Louis, but overall, far too many times, like, they showed it since the middle of July, second worst in all of baseball runs in scoring position to the historically bad Chicago White Sox, one of the worst teams in baseball history. That's how they've been with runners on base lately. They've been that bad. They've been, like, right with the White Sox. Like, come on now. So, I mean, someone's got to come through. Something's got to change. There's just been happening far too often lately.
Well, I mean, we do have geniuses running the show in the offensive office, so I think we'll get it going. But other than that, I mean, this is basically just the same, like, two different things that have continued to be the reasons as to why the Mets have lost, and whether they're talking about a good or solid starting pitching performance. You're seeing the offense just basically squander a lot of these opportunities, and one of the main guys who has been doing that all season long, we will get into in a second. But this is pretty much the same issues that we've had when they actually have had, like, back-to-back losses or lost a series, which they haven't done for a while. But a lot of the problems have been them basically just leaving a lot of opportunities on the table, and just basically, whenever they get into these positions to drive in runs, they have just continued to squander it, or they do the bare minimum of what can possibly happen to get one run. We have seen them countless of times with the bases loaded be one of the worst teams in all of baseball for a long time, not to mention a team that does prioritize getting on base a lot and can do a lot of things in the margins. With the new team that they have compared to last year, they've had the bases loaded a fairly amount of times, and they are one of the worst teams with it. And this is without J.D. Davis. J.D. Davis hasn't been here for 2 years. J.D. Davis is one of the worst hitters with the bases loaded. And we've established that for a long time. I think every single Mets fan knows how bad he was with the bases loaded. Water under the bridge. We're not here to talk about J.D. Davis. He ain't here anymore. He's trying to get he's trying to be employed at this point. But right now, the way that I look at it is, you have a lot of pieces in this lineup that we all know that can contribute or pop off at one point. And I've always talked about this team that plays through each other, and they have to gain a lot of momentum from each other, which, is one of the essential pieces to doing well in the postseason. Let's just say that, but you don't really know when it's going to come. The problem with how I look at it is, especially from this series, since the All-Star break ended and we came back, how I look at it is the bottom of the lineup produces a lot better with runners on in these situations, in these crunches, as compared to the top of the order, which I feel like, let's say 3 times out of 5, they fall asleep. They just fall asleep. And it's not even like really talking about just runners in scoring position, but when you're talking about a runner at third, and I know that, Frank, you talked about this a little bit on your post game. All you need is a sac fly, man. Yeah. All you need is a sac fly to break this thing open.
The amount of 2 strikes looking with runner at third, less than 2 outs, is unacceptable. And this was something that I wanted to get into later when we got to Alvarez, but I feel like it's kind of relevant now. The way how every single right-handed hitter on this team has the same issue of breaking balls on the outside corner and nobody can hit them, even JD Martinez, the master of hitting, I feel like that has to say something to coaching, because there's no way that the entire team all has the same problem. I mean, Alvarez, Vientos, Alonso, Martinez, Taylor just kind of whips at everything. But these guys on that outside corner on a slider, nobody can hit it.
Well, you know how the broadcast does it. Don't throw a fastball to Taylor. That's a bad idea.
Yeah, because, you just throw it to the outside corner and none of these right-handed hitters could do anything with it. So it's like, how does everyone have the same flaw? And before Sean Manaea was turning in these good starts, I felt like the same thing with the pitching. Between Manaea, Quintana, and Peterson, I feel like I'm watching the same guy over and over. They're all lefties that can't throw strikes and have a lot of the same problems. So I feel like that goes to coaching as well. It's like, how do you have so many different players all with the same weaknesses? Something has to be into approach, into mindset, into everything, because I know you're a fan of like pulling fly balls, and while I'm with you with power, it's just that sometimes the game plan of the other team should change your game plan. When they're just pounding you with outside pitches, you got to go with it. You can't just be trying to pull it and whiffing at it.
Forget even pulling fly balls here when we're talking about these crunch time situations, which they have come through. They've been good with runners in scoring position overall as a team.
Yeah, overall, yes.
In this stretch,
but
we're talking about here, I'm not even talking about pulling fly balls at this point. Lift it. Just lift the damn ball.
Yeah, too many ground balls, too many double plays. I mean, they do pretty much everything you don't want to do with runners in scoring position. Hitting the ball on the ground for the double plays.
This guy's a big sinker baller. He's supposed to get ground balls. Stop swinging at things out of the fucking zone then.
Yeah, definitely.
Like most sinkers are supposed to run outside the zone, sink to the other batter's box. That's what sinkers are supposed to do. And that's what we call bad pitch selection. So when your pitch selection and pitch recognition doesn't work well hand in hand, you're going to get these types of inconsistencies. And the fact that we're seeing those types of inconsistencies from the big bats so far recently, when you're talking about Pete or Martinez, Nimmo has not looked good recently. I mean, Lindor has slowed down a little bit, but he's still noticeable, at least in that lineup. When you look at the bottom half of this lineup, and this is something that we weren't able to say last year or the year before, they have been able to like actually clutch up in these situations and actually work counts or somewhat know the situation. Right now, I feel like there's some hitters in here. Pete Alonso's the main culprit in this one, where you don't have to do everything anymore. And I feel like for some reason, he feels that way. And I understand him wanting to feel that way because that's how it's been for 5 years. But I think that there's a lot of lack of awareness with guys like Pete Alonso. JD Martinez, we've seen him do it before, so I'm not going to go after him completely as to where this is a problem, this is a trend, this is something that needs to go. We all know that he can swing at tons of pit. We all know that he likes to swing. Yes. But there are some trends that back and forth that we see with Pete Alonso. This has been the main reasons as to why a lot of our offense has been limited this year. We saw it a little bit last year as to where he just really has been chasing a lot of pitches, whether you're talking about the outside slider, whether you're talking about just pitches out of the zone, the high fastball, which has continued to destroy him, not to mention the guys who are there he's completely getting sawed off, like, at his stomach and swinging at these pitches. He just really has not been able to get the bat to the ball with any sort of authority at all this season, and not to mention just swinging at a bunch of crappy pitches. And that's what they want in these situations against Pete, and it's become a weakness because they know that outside slider, Pete's probably going to swing at that. If you can land a slider in any part of the strike zone and it lands to the other batter's box, Peter Alonso, I don't know why I said Peter, but Peter Alonso is going to swing at it 9 times out of 10. And they use that. And that's the main thing. And listen, I see I'm easy going after Pete in the comments. Hold your horses. We're gonna go after him later on. But I do want to get into this series, the rundown of everything that happened. Now, the Mets obviously traveled to Anaheim, which was right across from Disneyland, and this team was pretty much just floated into fairy dust for most of it. But to start it off, it was pretty good. Let's just say Paul Blackburn, very good debut. 6 hits, 1 earned run, gave us volume, gave us swing and misses. No complaint there from Paul Blackburn so far. Pete Alonso had a home run to tie the game. Run batted in by JD Martinez. Another run batted in by Alvarez. Lindor a hit. 3-hit game for Nimmo. That's good to get him off the schneid a little bit. 1 for 5 from Vientos, 1 for 5 from Iglesias, 2 hits from Bader, 2 hits from Taylor. Mets won 5-1. Not much stress in that game. Game 2, Peterson, solid. 6 innings, 2 earned runs, 4 strikeouts, some high pitch counts there. Not some high pitch counts. Lots of full counts early, had to be taken out after 82 pitches. JD Martinez got the big hit with the grand slam to tie it up at 4 later on in the game. And, to tie it, yeah. Yeah, he got the grand slam to tie it up, which has been like his only extra base hits since the All-Star break. You had 2 hits from Lindor, hit from Nimmo, hit from Alonso mixed in there, hit from Vientos, hit from McNeil. But the main killer in this one, Huskar Brazaban, one of the newest Mets acquired at the deadline, giving up the go-ahead 3-run homer in the 7th inning, which pretty much put them away and pretty much tasting the wrath of Ben Joyce, who throws 105 miles an hour. Game 3 of this series, Jose Quintana went 5 innings, lots of full counts, was not able to get much distance, 3 earned runs, 4 walks, not great. But he was able to keep them in the game. Lindor drove in a run, could have drove in the tying run, but there was a home run that was called foul. Another run batted in by Bader, hit by Winker, hit by Alvarez, hit by McNeil. But the Mets ended up losing this game because the offense wasn't enough. They constantly stranded so many runners, and as you can see, the Mets offense in that series, 6 for 35 with runners in scoring position. Not ideal. Let's just say that. And then they flew right back to, they flew a little bit east to Missouri to take on the Cardinals in a makeup game, like we just said, from like May 10th, May 9th, something like that. Shamania was absolutely brilliant. 7 scoreless innings, 10 strikeouts. He became the 3rd Mets lefty in history with back-to-back 10 strikeout outings. Incredible. He was great. Definitely the star of this game, but you had quite a little bit of offense. You had a home run from McNeil, continuing the power surge as the known power hitter that he is. 3 runs batted in to clear the bases by Tyrone Taylor. That was the big hit there. Run batted in by Bader once again. Hit from Alonso, hit from Alvarez. 2 hits from Alvarez, hit from Iglesias. And the Mets shut out the Cardinals, which I believe is just their 4th shutout of the season, to rebound from a series loss in Anaheim. The main takeaways from this 4 stretch of games, I mean, obviously we already kind of put out our complaints as to what we have been seeing recently with the offense just kind of going on the inconsistent train that it was early on this season. But the main takeaways from the pitching, every single thing that you saw in these last 4 games, give it to me in 30 seconds or less, Frank.
Oh, I got a lot more than 30 seconds, so I gotta apologize there. I'm gonna actually take a little bit of a different direction. It's like you said, we covered a lot of our main gripes. I just want to kind of go back a little bit and just kind of like first impressions of like the trade deadline now that the deadline is over and we had like a couple series under our belts. And so far with Jesse Winker, he's been worse than DJ Stewart as a Met so far, and that's just like really frustrating because
Yeah,
it would seem like it'd be almost impossible to do that. In order to do that, you would essentially have to
yeah.
never get on base, and he's
I
been
felt
pretty
like
close to
touching on
that.
that in this game, in this episode, but I was like, okay, I'm just gonna let it like sit a little bit.
Like I'm
But
trying, you know what I
yeah,
mean? Like I'm
I
trying,
am
but like
trying to.
so
Yeah,
far, it's just been terrible. Like he's just not doing
yeah.
anything, and it's frustrating because I really like him. I like his approach. Like I feel like the results should be better. He hit some balls hard, but still just not at all what we thought we were getting. Like especially that they felt so highly about him that they were going to put him as that lefty between Alonso and Vientos and everything, bat him fifth and certain instances. So like they're asking like a pretty big thing from him, and right now Taylor's kind of the better option. So I feel like that's something that really I want to see kind of get better. But with Brazaban, he's such an interesting one to me, and it's because of his age and his contract. Because I know a lot of people like don't love trading for rentals, and I get that. Like I totally understand. You don't want to just get someone here for a couple months and then you don't have them anymore. Like it doesn't seem like a great idea. But I feel like with someone like Brazaban and relief pitching in general, a lot of times during a trade deadline, you do it for a rental for relievers because of the inconsistencies that they can have for year to year. And when people are saying like the appeal of Brazaban is like, oh my gosh, he has so much team control. He's gonna be here till 2029. When a guy is 34 years old and is someone who relies a lot on velocity, I don't really see that as much of a good thing because I have concerns about how you age once we're paying you at age 37, age 38. Are you still going to have 98 miles an hour? Like, that's really not so much a guarantee. And
I
you
mean,
know
his
what?
his fastball is not his best pitch, so
Yeah,
I
but
wouldn't say that
it's still a
he's
big
relying
part
on
of what he
velocity that
does to
much.
help set everything else up.
I get
So,
it.
if you're Brazaban and here's your first big opportunity and you're just completely failing, that's one of those things I talk about, like with the guys that you played on the Marlins who were just absolutely terrible and your way out of it. And then you get thrown right into a wild card race, into a competitive team, into New York, totally different atmosphere. He was playing in Los Angeles in this particular game, but I do have some concerns there as far as like, okay, what are we really going to do there? And watching Severino and his struggles that he had against Minnesota, because I wasn't on with that you guys, I'm worried about like what is the actual ceiling of this team. You know what I mean? Because I feel like, once the Senga thing happened, it really should have changed the way they approached the deadline, in my opinion. I feel like their ceiling, their chance was with Senga. And to not get another ace in replacement, whether they were going to be available or not, I understand that a few guys didn't get moved, so I'm not going to hold the Mets accountable for that. I'm not going to hold that against them. But if you're not going to be able to replace them, and you saw what the sellers market was, I just feel that with the moves that they made, they can't go far with this current rotation. And even if Manaea, I mean, is Manaea really going to pitch like this every time? That'd be their only chance because the way I look at it is that Manaea starts one game, Severino starts one game. Who starts the other game? I mean, you're literally looking at, is it Quintana, Peterson, or Blackburn? That's really not a great selection to have. And when we talk about, this idea of, oh, they're going to go for it, what they did, like, it was solid. They improved their team, like Andrew said, raised their floor. But that, first of all, that was not going all in. And it didn't move any needles. Like, it's not really going to decide a playoff series or anything like that. Like, they really didn't get that much better. And when the ultimate goal of any sport is to win a championship, and for me, this is a very, like, unpopular opinion, but when I look at what they did on the deadline, I think with the way the sellers market was, there's a better chance of them winning a World Series, selling off these starting pitchers that are not going to be here for a long time, getting a bunch of amazing prospects, than just kind of getting a bunch of medium pieces. That's just the way I feel. I think that if you're not going to win with this team anyway, and you see the way San Diego is acting, the way Arizona is acting, for you just get like a couple little guys here and there, think that's going to fix it. I just don't think they fix what actually gets you all the way. And I always say that if you're the Mets, you need to go back to the 2015 blueprint. How you got in was your rotation. And if you're going in there with no aces, you're not going to call up Sproat. You don't know what's happening with Christian Scott. I just don't see how it's going to work out. So I think that there's a much better chance of getting just a bunch of awesome young pieces to be good for a really long time and giving you more assets so that when you do have a really solid team, you have so many guys you can move that you can actually get needle movers. But instead, it's like now Quintana's going to walk for nothing. You could have got a great deal for him and plenty of other guys. Even McGill, you probably could have got something if you look at what Trevor Rogers got. So I just think that the way it's set up right now, I just don't see them going very far. So I feel like you could have gone either way, but that's just how I feel like a week or so after the deadline.
I mean, the timing of it, I think, was the main reason as to why they did what they did and didn't do what they didn't do. I mean, I think that when what I look at it is I would have loved to trade Quintana. I know I was one of the biggest voices to be the one to trade Quintana, but then the Scott injury happened, and I'm like, okay, well, you can just move Budo, and then maybe you get something back for Quintana. Then the Senga injury happens, and you're like, okay, well, that's out the window now. He's going to be here for the rest of the year. So I think that there was pretty much just a cause and effect that happened real quick, and they had to pivot that the way that they did. I feel like if there was only one piece that they could have moved the needle with this rotation, and we're talking about a 2015 type of rotation, if we're talking about that, the only way that they could have moved the needle was a trade for Blake Snell, which it didn't seem that he was going to be available, or they trade for Blake Snell, and also they give a call up to Brandon Sproat. They fast track him up here, and I think that was the only way that they could have done that. I think they went a little bit more of the conservative way because one, it didn't seem like those dominoes were going to fall into place. So they had to make some kind of move for Paul Blackburn. I don't think that Paul Blackburn is a playoff rotation guy, and that's the main reason as to why I think a lot of people are kind of meh on the move as to where, maybe he's just not really a guy who goes into the playoff rotation. Maybe he's like the fourth starter there, fringe fourth starter in the postseason, but he's not somebody who is going to be defaultedly put in to the starting pitcher 1, 2, or 3 in the wild card series, which is what the Mets are going to be playing in. No matter if they win this division or not, they're still going to be in a wild card position. So even if you talk about, them adding somebody else, I think that even if they do that, there still, I feel like there still was going to be concerns around the rotation, whether you're talking about somebody like Severino, who it seems like he needs that extra day of rest at this point going into it. And it doesn't seem like they're going to go with the 6-man rotation because it seems like that was kind of accustomed to Kodai Senga, and he's kind of been scrapped from the plans. I personally don't think, I looked at this team and I don't think that there was any real need for any needle movers, to be honest. I think the only way that they're actually going to succeed is if the big guys actually do step up. Like, that's the only way that I saw that happening, because I mean, we talked about this when we went live. There was a lot of things available. There was a lot of pieces available that we saw bats go, and it seemed like only like 2 like actual notable bats went off and traded off. I mean, I guess Jimenez you can count off as that. A Rosarena maybe. Like, I think when we think that, I don't know. It's really hard to look at it as from hindsight, because I think that at one point there was a move or two they probably could have put in there. I'm giving some time to Jesse Winker, but I think that it just made the lineup deeper. And I think that was the main reason as to what they looked at. They really just wanted to make everything deeper. And I understand wanting depth, and that's kind of one thing that can win you a lot of games. But I understand the lack of star power that it seems like they needed to add the best at this position when they don't have this position good. But I just don't think that it was out there. And even if it was out there, the price was probably so astronomical that it didn't even make sense to even try for a chance at a World Series, especially when you're in the position that you are in such a crapshoot wild card position. Like, I get it. I understand wanting to make the deal, because like I was open to a Blake Snell trade. Like I was open to that. But obviously it had to be for the right price. I don't even think the Giants
I don't think the Giants wanted to
no,
do
they
it.
didn't even
Yeah.
go for it. Yeah, which was very odd. They traded Soler and then got Mark Canna. I, I I don't understand what they did there, but this isn't a Giants
I
show,
think
so
that was
who
more
cares?
so like get a rental for a guy that had multiple years on the deal kind of thing. Like
Sure.
it's a weird
I
move
don't
for
know.
sure.
That was very odd. But the Giants are still in this race. They're at 500. You know, they're chasing us as well. So
Mhm.
there could have been a possibility where they were like, okay, well, we're a few games within you as well. We
Yeah.
could still win this thing too. And yeah, we ain't sending you Blake Snell. We're not sending you this guy or that guy. But they voluntarily also gave just Jorge Soler to the Braves. You know, just because that's completely different, right? That's completely different. Even though we're all in the same wild card race as of right now, you know, they're only like what 4.5 games behind the Braves, and they were like, you know what, Braves, just take them for no reason. Go ahead, take them back, do your little World Series relap from 2021, and you know, get the hell out of our face. And you know, that's kind of how it works with the Braves because you know you're voluntarily known that you have to give up a player to the Braves. That's actually a law in the CBA. If you didn't know that. But so it is very weird, and I know that the Mets probably had a strict kind of limit of what they were willing to give up, and I understand that obviously because I really do want this team to be a sustainable winner, and I didn't want to see them just like pig out to really just and not even acknowledge what the problems were on this team. Just basically pig out like they did in 2022, where they just stitched things together and replace this with this and replace this with this. They added to the roster. They made it deep. I think they did a fine job. It doesn't dance off the page, but I think that in the current situation that they're in, that was that. I think that Huascar Brazaban's getting a lot of heat right now, and I think that people need to give him a chance because I do think that he is a good arm. Same thing goes for Ryan Stanek. People that went after him on his first appearance, let's relax. And I think that Paul Blackburn, as Rangers Central is putting in, is like basically, you know, he's a merchant of bad teams, you know, saying like he sucks against good teams. And that's probably the main reason as to why is the main turnoff as to where, you know, he's probably not in the playoff rotation. Maybe there's a way that he's the game 4 guy in a 7-game series, but not in the wild card series. And that's the main reason as to why people are a little concerned is they're like, oh, well, we gave up Cade Morris, who's not amazing, but he's a pitching prospect. He's young for a guy who's not even going to be in the playoff rotation, which it kind of it doesn't, but it kind of like weighs out the possibilities of, you know, how like maybe the you know, how like the Phillies paid Taijuan Walker to just basically sit on the bench throughout the entire postseason. Maybe that's the way that you can probably compare it. Different way is that the Mets have another year of control. They're looking at the long term. And I think that's the best way to really put it as to where they can put themselves in such a flexible position at the end of the season, even if they don't win. Because right now, there is a strong possibility that they don't win the World Series. There's a strong possibility that maybe they do get to the World Series by some miracle run that the Nationals had or the Arizona Diamondbacks had. But it's good to have that safety net because we've seen it all. We have seen the Mets succeed. We have seen the Mets fail many, many times. And it's good to have that there. I understand wanting to go for it. I get it. I just don't think that there was really any pieces out there. And not to mention there were limited pieces out there. So the market was going to be high. You know, Blake Snell was like the only frontline arm out there pretty much because it seemed like Crochet was not even traded. Like nobody was even engaging in talks for him. And Crochet even, he's not even like that big type of guy. So
Yeah,
this
and
was a
Skubal
seller's
didn't get
market.
moved either. So
Yeah, exactly. Skubal
that
didn't
also
get
hurt.
moved either, even though that was kind of like a little bit of a cave dream or
Mhm.
whatever.
Or
But when
even
you're talking about
Eovaldi, he didn't get
Eovaldi
moved.
as
Like
well,
the guys that you really
yeah,
want, like they weren't even available. So
they weren't
it was
available.
tough.
There wasn't many talks. You know, like their name were brought up, but nothing crazy.
I
And
just felt
Snell
like
was
it
like
was
the
a
only one there, but
historic
he was taken off as
sellers
well.
deadline. You know, I just feel like there
Yeah,
was there was just an opportunity for at least for some of the guys to, you know,
yeah.
especially with Quintana. Like if he's not going to be in your playoff rotation anyway, like if you could get a couple
I
of
feel like
top
he is
tens.
right now. That's the
Well, I don't
problem.
know. I hope not. But
That's the
I don't
concern.
know. I thought
Yeah.
there was a, and even like to go back to the 6 man thing. I feel like just also how bad McGill has been is also a reason why they haven't done it. Like if McGill was like usable, I feel like they would still try it, but they just don't want to give him a start. Like they're like, oh, put him in the bullpen. You know, we'll just put back in AAA. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
they've tried so many different things. They're just like, you know what, just forget it. Like just go in AAA and see you later.
I hope they try him out as an outfielder next year, to be honest, because this thing ain't really working out here. But I look at it as in terms of the series, I think that one thing that needs to come over a lot of Mets fans as they kind of um, look towards the future, and this is a conversation more for the off season, but it is very relevant now. And I said this out on Twitter, and a lot of people agreed with it. And I know that the flashy name of Luis Severino, as to where we all know that at his best he can be a really good pitcher, he can be a strikeout pitcher, but I really have seen it as to where I'm not one who likes to retain UFAs, because I'm not somebody who likes to retain 1 year deal UFAs, because once they get like their best year, you pay them, you bring him back. He did it once, he'll do it again. That's the kind of way that I say, let's try to prevent that, not buyer's remorse, but rebuyer's remorse. And I don't like bringing back 1 year deals. It's not really one thing that I like to do. But I'd say that if you had to choose between a UFA to bring back, whether you're looking at Severino, Quintana, Bader, even if it's Ottavino, which hope they don't, I think that the most safe bet is Shamania. Shamania is the most safe bet here, because if you look at it, you want to look at it from history, because you're paying it for what they want, for what they have done, what they want. He has pitched over 120 innings in 7 of his 8 seasons in the major leagues. Right? He has history giving you, a bunch of innings that can be filled in by the back end of the rotation. He strikes out around 25% of batters a year. Also, he has starter upside with how his stuff has improved by going to driveline, and reliever upside as well. He did very good out of the bullpen. He has reliever experience. I think that it's a lot more stable to go to a guy like Shamania to back up your rotation, as compared to somebody like Luis Severino, who I feel like the situation as to where Severino's looking at it is, right now it seems like let's try to squeeze as much toothpaste as we can out of it until there's nothing left. Like, that's how I'm kind of looking at it with Severino. And maybe it's some kind of overreaction from the last start that he had, or how the way that he's kind of slowed down. But even though Severino has been good for them, I think that going forward, Shamania has a potential to do something even better for them, and kind of basically be a foundation to this rotation, as compared to somebody like Severino, who has the upside. We know he throws hard or whatever, but when is this guy going to actually be on the field for 120 plus innings again? There's no guarantee about that, because when we signed him, he pitched 120 innings combined for the last 4 seasons before he came here. So it is something to think about. Again, that's more of off-season things, but obviously Shamania has been great. His last 10 starts or whatever, he's been fantastic. So what do you think about that? Like, is that something that is more of a safer bet, or do you still need to see more?
I mean, the way he's pitched in his last 2 outings, I mean, it's been encouraging. And even that stat, it was 2 straight 7-inning starts of 10 strikeouts. It's something that even Jacob deGrom never did as a Met, which is such a weird thing. And it's really because of the innings, you know what I mean? Like, it's not the strikeouts, because deGrom could strike out buyers, no problem. But working deep into games, as we know, is just a problem for pretty much any Mets pitcher. So the fact that Manaea has finally been giving length, and in his start yesterday to not walk any batters, I'm like, okay, here we go. So there still is time. Like he still has all of August and all of September. So then what happens is that it's like, okay, well, if he continues to pitch, maybe not this well, but still really, really good in September and August, and he finishes with an amazing season, you're like, oh, we really want to keep this guy. You know he's going to opt out because of good season. But then it comes down to like, what is your price? Because if he's looking like an ace, that's kind of where I'm torn.
Yeah,
is that if he's
I get it.
pitching this good, it's like
I don't think
like
he will be. I think he's mid rotation, but
yeah, so it's like you want to keep
yeah,
Mania, but it's like if let's say like Taiwan Walker, for example, like if someone's gonna pay him almost like ace level money over a 4 to 5 year span, that's where it gets a little dicey. It's like in
yeah,
general, sure, I'd like to keep him, and I definitely prefer to keep him over Severino because of that injury history that you talked about, and even just the fact that Severino's had a few stinkers lately, and it feels like it's
yeah,
happening more often than it was earlier in the year. It just hasn't been that same consistency. So, and I just feel like with Severino, he's a ticking time bomb in a sense where I just feel like at any given moment he could have an injury. And, you know,
yeah,
when his fastball velo was down in the start against the Twins, like I thought there was some concern about injury. I think I put in our group chat, I was like, well, is it what kind of discomfort or inflammation is he going to have tomorrow? You know what I mean? Like it's so
yeah.
many times where you see a guy with a bad start, it's like, oh, his elbow had discomfort. You know, I thought we were gonna get one of those. That didn't happen. So I feel like with Mania, there definitely is much more to kind of feel confident about. And I'm just kind of curious to see how it all shakes out, and if like he really has found something and finally put it all together to put together back-to-back starts. And that St. Louis game was a big one. You know, that definitely was a really big start from him. They needed him to come through, and he did. He absolutely did. So that was huge. He's just been really clutch lately. So I just kind of want to see him keep doing that. I feel like he has the stuff to be successful. It's just a matter of not walking batters, not having that high pitch count, because that's when he can't get deep into games. So if he's actually giving this team volume, letting them save the bullpen for the Quintana starts and Severino starts and Peterson starts and things like that, then it would just make the team much more successful in the long term. And not only on the days he pitches, but also on the days he doesn't pitch. Like his hard work wouldn't just doesn't help you for the one game. Him working deep as a game helps you for multiple games, having those other relievers available.
Yeah, I think that I've always been the proponent of it's not how you start, it's how you finish. And when he began this season, he was in a career high walk rate. I'm pretty sure he still is, but at a career high walk rate, I mean, he was above 11%. He's cut that thing down to 9.2% recently. I mean, in the past span of games that he's pitched. The one thing that I think is going to be the main turnoff, but even though it is a small sample, I know that he has had his occasional postseason blowups. That is one thing that I know that might turn them off of that. But I do also want to put into account that even if he does not do well in the postseason, and again, this is kind of just projecting low cut here, you know, more or less at the pace that we're going, you're wanting Sean Manaea to be a number one in the postseason with what they have right now, with Senga out, with Scott out, with Quintana, he's just not that good. Severino kind of slowing down a little bit, and they want to limit the innings. So you're kind of looking at Sean Manaea to be a number one in the postseason, which he's just not. Like I think we've already established that at the best he's a number three in the rotation.
That's kind of what I was getting at. Is that I just don't really see a real good path, even if Manaea's pitching well, like him as your one, or you know, Severino as your two. Like I feel like Severino's just too capable of blowups that I'm like, if it's not going to go far, why are we like not capitalizing on some other opportunities?
And we've seen Sean Manaea actually take it into a full season multiple times in his career. Mm-hmm. And, you know, even though he's had a few ding ups or whatever, he's never also health has never been bad
too. Like not only was he hurt, but he also was just not very good. Remember the whole tipping pitches thing when he was with the Yankees? Like, oh, that was the problem. It's just that he was tipping pitches, and now they got that fixed. So it's like it was a combination of things to where he just wasn't doing all that. Like you know, like since it was a 1-year deal, we didn't totally hate it, but it was not something that I think any of us really thought, oh, this should be like a long-term thing the Mets should be looking at.
Yeah,
and now there's this whole story with Manaea and like him admitting to being lazy or whatever. What's the deal with that? Apparently, like when he was in San Diego, like he admitted to like not fully trying or something weird. Like that was like the story going around today. So it's just like it's
Oh,
always something with these players.
yeah. Okay. Got it. Um, yeah, I mean, probably because let's just say the way that San Diego was ran was a fucking circus with all those egos there. But they're still in this race here, so I don't know if he's more motivated now than he was now. I don't know, but we always have to make a guy a devil. Everybody has to disagree with somebody and disagree with some kind of statement, whether it is just making up shit or not. So, I mean, I don't know if that's true or whatever. It hasn't seemed to be a problem yet. So, right now we are at 120 innings has been pitched by Sean Manaea this season. I haven't had one shit complaint about him once. And I would much rather him, when we talk about the walk problems, I'd much rather him walk even 10 batters if he gets it out of his system at the beginning of the season than in crunch time in these August and September games. That's what he has been doing recently. Like I think that when, even if he does, not pitch as well as he has this year, he is coming off of this year is probably the best year of his career. Like he really has had the best year of his career. I think that for the right price, that's the man that I would try to retain. I think that you're probably looking at something like a Bassett contract. You're probably looking at that. And Bassett was not great in the postseason. So maybe it's a little similar in that sense. But when we're talking about,
I also
Sean
think
Manaea as to
it's
where,
kind of
yeah,
tough too when you're looking at these guys who come from Oakland, and I'm not trying to like totally bash Oakland, but it's like they don't really have playoff experience. You know what I mean? So I feel like this kind of
I
like
would,
like now it's like your first
yeah.
time, and like I don't know, I feel like you kind of learn as you go in a certain sense. You know what I mean? Like it's kind of
Yeah, I
hard to
mean,
hold that against some of these guys, but because again,
Oakland,
like it's such a different environment of Oakland, like nobody cares, you're horrible, and then it's like New
yeah,
York playoffs pressure. Like that's a lot for players like
yeah.
on your first experience. It's like a rookie in a sense. Like that's kind of tough.
I mean, yeah, I get it. And also, I mean, Oakland's also a huge pitcher's park too. So there's another factor there.
Yeah.
But not as much of a pitcher's park as the Mets and the Padres did that. Made sure to say that in a playoff environment, no, we can hit there. But even if we're looking at it as a playoff rotation, I think that God, I am scared. I agree with you as to where I don't know if this is going to be enough, and it's going to be the main reason as to why maybe there's a possibility that they do fail in the postseason is going to be this rotation, because we all know that the offense eventually it's going to be better than what it was, because they've proven all year that they've been able to be better than what they were doing. Even after that offensive dry spell that they've had, I mean, they even showed up yesterday in that makeup game in St. Louis. So we know that they can do it. It's not like a full-on trend all season where they can't hit with runners in scoring position. They just go through these peaks and valleys, and hopefully they come at a peak in the postseason. But they're not even in the postseason yet, so that's not even a topic of discussion right now. But with the rotation, I am a little scared to death as to where they're just not going to be able to get like any length out of this rotation in the postseason, because I don't think that you can really rely on a lot of first pitch swinging in the postseason. There's going to be a lot more competitive ABs there, and that's going to drive the pitch count up. And let's just say the walks it's a problem this year, and it continues to be, no matter what, no matter how good they played, it will continue to be an issue, and it's probably going to continue to be an issue for the rest of the season. So I am a little nervous with that. Let's just say that if you have Quintana pitching in the wild card series and you're winning go home series, that's bad. That's not good.
Yeah,
Um,
I also think too, as far as with Budo, I'm kind of done with this like 2 inning stuff when we're up a bunch of runs or whatever. I think it's the dumbest thing ever. I
yeah,
would actually like to
I
just
get
try
it.
him out in the rotation because, like we said, if we're trying to decide between like Quintana, Peterson, Blackburn, like just try out Budo. You know, like I
Yeah,
feel like
I get it.
once Nunez is up, Reed Foley's in the mix, Reed Garrett's in the mix. You added Stanek, you added Brazvon, you added Maton, you have Diaz, maybe you have something in Alex Young. Like, there's enough relievers. Like, if those guys can't get the job done, too bad. You know, we already did this with Seth Lugo that I'm like, no, this rotation has so many issues right now. Put Boone in rotation and see if it
Yeah,
translates. Like, if he's not gonna be as good, but if he's elite in the rotation, because he's been elite in the bullpen. Like, if he's elite,
yeah.
that's your only chance. Like, since you didn't go to add an ace, it's like, well, if you move Budo to rotation, and now maybe let's call up Sproat, and it's like now all of a sudden you got a few pretty good arms. Now you have a
Mhm.
chance because I just think right now with the current options, it's tough. So I
I
feel
mean,
like with the bullpen, you should
yeah.
have enough guys because what happens is that in that game against the Angels, the one they went 5-1, you have 4 runs, you use Budo for 2. Now he's not available for the next 2 days that you lose the game in tight games. So why use him for 1 if you're not gonna have him for 2? Where you could have him for 2 or maybe 3 if you don't do the multiple inning stuff. So I think that there's just more of
Are you
a
saying that David Peterson wasn't going to go 8 innings the next day?
that would have been a miracle. You want to talk about miracles? That would have been a miracle. So I just feel like there's like it's a give or take a little bit. Like he's been great. So I don't know. I don't like at first I was like, okay, we definitely need Budo because how bad the bullpen's been. But now with how many guys that they've added and have stepped up, I'm like, okay, now that the bullpen is solid and is solidified and not just falling apart, now we can put Budo's rotation. Because that was my thing, is I was like, no, this bullpen's so bad, you can't take him out. But I think now with all these guys that they added with Stanek and all them, like, no, Budo
I
could
just
move
think
back
he's
in.
a better profile in the rotation. Like I just don't think that there's stability from him in high leverage spots as a bullpen piece. And even though he has been able to succeed that way, you're going to be facing some really good teams, some really good high leverage hitters, even in the playoffs. If you're talking about that situation, I mean, would you much rather not just want like an actual sturdy arm? And when I say sturdy arm, a guy who is a starter who has really good pitch shape, that is what Pose Budo is able to succeed on. It's not stuff because he doesn't have the best stuff. He doesn't. It's known, but he's been able to refine it, make his arsenal a lot deeper, and he's been able to get away with it because of the good pitch shape that he has. He's a sturdy arm, a very
And
repeatable
he's not
motion.
walking the ballpark too.
He's
So
not
that, I mean,
walking the
that's another
ballpark
thing.
either.
Like he's being attacking. Like he's just been really. He looks like a different guy out there. I mean, he really looks like
I
a
would
totally
feel a
different
lot
pitcher.
better putting Budo in the postseason rotation pitching for Game 3 than compared to any of the other guys outside of Manaea and
That's
Severino
fair.
for Game 1 and 2. Is that bad of a take? I don't think it
No.
is.
I like it.
But I think
that's
it's a little
just,
too late to stretch
it's
him out to that.
also
That's the
it's
problem.
also just because of in comparison to the other options. Like if the other guys weren't having all the struggles and inconsistencies, like that's the thing that just scares me is that I feel like with a lot of these guys, whether it's Severino, Quintana, it's like the tendency for the blow up. And that's what I'm afraid of is that like in a
Yeah,
playoff series, you just can't take a chance where it's like, oh, he had a blow up, we're done. Like you don't really get another opportunity. Like you need guys who even if they may give up a couple of runs, as long as they're keeping me in the game and they give me a quality start, I'll live with that. I can't take the chance of, oh, maybe I'll get 6 scores or maybe I'll get 4 innings and 6 runs. Like
Yeah.
that's really hard to. That's like such a low chance of winning. I just don't like that opportunity.
I think they put themselves in a position where they're like, okay, well, Senga is going to be the heavy lifter, and we know that he can be the heavy lifter, and we know that he can be the legit number one in this rotation. Because even when he comes back after what was he missed like 4 months of the season, he comes back. The guy was like he was lights out.
Yeah.
The guy he was killing it against a Braves team who has not really been doing well, but they still have good hitters on that team. Like
As we
he
saw
just
in
came
the
out
rest
of
of the
a
series.
rehab, you know. Yeah, and listen, I think we already know that Senga was supposed to be that legit guy, but now they don't have him, so now they just need a lot of parts to move. A lot of parts for this to move fairly well, and I don't know if they're going to be able to bring that to the capacity of. Oof, I don't know. I'm a little scared when it comes to a little bit of this rotation because I know all of these guys can have good starts. All these guys can have good outings, but is it enough? That's going to continue to be the question. And maybe is there a possibility because he was just called up to AAA that maybe you put Brandon Sproat into that rotation and put him into the equation? Maybe. Maybe that starts something up.
I've said it a bunch of times, but I feel like he needs to get in there at some point. I want to see it.
I would say if you get quality, like what, 1 or 2 quality outings from him in AAA, because you know how I feel about AAA.
Yeah. And he was like
Get him up
dominant in Double A. Like he was just on another level.
Destroying him. Exactly.
Yeah, so because it's for multiple reasons. Number one, like we said, the uncertainty of the rotation, and as far as like who's our 3, who's our 4, like in a playoff scenario, like that's part of it. But also how many of these guys are on short-term deals and trying to reassemble another rotation. And I feel like if you could go into next year knowing that at least I have another starting pitcher arm on my team already going into it, now that's one less starting pitcher that I need in the offseason, and I could focus maybe more money to somewhere else. So I feel like just having a little more clarity on your future is also something that's really appealing. And, you know, it worked in 2015, so I'd give it a try. I feel like if he's like this dominant, you have to try and just see what happens.
I'm not using the narrative there because I'm not using the narrative there, and I'm not going to put the Syndergaard pressure on the kid as to where he just comes in as a rookie and just completely dominates and blows by hitters. We know that he has the stuff there, so it's not like he's not major league ready. We've seen a lot of scouts recently say that, you know, he's got the makeup of a big leaguer. He's got the makeup of a legit arm. So that's good to see. But, you know, we have to see it on the major league field first, and I'm open to it if they want to give it a try, because even with this rotation being able to give you 2-run outings, they're only through 5 innings, they're only through 6 innings or whatever. So we're all like, oh, well, they're all ERAs in the 3s and almost the 4s. Yeah, good. But there are strong possibilities where it all just goes down like a house of cards, because we've seen blow-ups from all these guys. We've seen their very best. We've seen their very worst. We haven't seen the very best or very worst from Sproat in the major leagues yet. That's the type of major league stuff that can push you past the rotation. And I hate putting pressure on a kid. I hate plugging guys into a role that, because we have this prospect, no need to do this, no need to do that. And that, you know, like when I say, like, when people say, oh, well, we don't need Jeff anymore, we've got Jet and Acuna.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's not always
not the reason as to why I'd get rid of Jeff McNeil. There's other reasons why, but not that reason. The thing is, the way that I look at it is, you know, you got to kind of look at it from within. So if Sproat is the guy that you say he is, don't have him wasting bullets on a bunch of guys who are going to be accountants, bagging groceries in AAA once they're unemployed, because that's what is basically there in AAA, especially in August and in September when guys get called up and guys get shipped out of here and guys, like, you know, AAA hitters are AAA hitters. It's an inflated run environment. I've talked about this before. Brandon Sproat, most likely in his AAA debut, he will probably have 3 earned runs and not make it out of the 5th inning, and everyone will panic. I can guarantee you that in his AAA debut. That can most likely happen. Just like we said with Christian Scott, I'm going to tell you right now, take it more into consideration as to what he did in AA, because that AAA has been one thing after another. We've talked about it with Vassell, Hamill, and Tidwell. All of them have fluctuated into AAA, and now for them not pitching well or guys who have not had good stretches or whatever, now they're completely out of the equation, right? I mean, even with Vassell or Vassell, Hamill, or Tidwell, I don't think they're completely out of the equation yet. I think that they're all organizational depth until proven otherwise.
Especially Blade. Like Blade
Yeah,
has
Blade as well.
potential. Like
Blade's struggled in AAA, and I'm understanding as to why recently, as to where, and I'm trying to limit the prospect talk here, but I am starting to realize as to why a lot of people are seeing him as a back end more than a front line now. But that's a whole different story. With Sproat, you know, if you get a quality start, 2 quality starts out of AAA, out of 3 from him, get him up here. I don't care about the service time. I just don't care. I mean, at one point, you gotta check all the boxes, and so far he has in his first full season in the minor leagues. Also, another ticking time bomb that we like to talk about it with prerequisites. He has not had Tommy John surgery yet. So it's either you use those bullets now or you use them 2 years from now after he gets Tommy John surgery. Like I'm saying, you're wasting bullets here.
And that's kind of what's weird with Scott is that like it just feels to me that like his arm is about to go at any moment. You know, so I kind of wonder like
I just don't think he's used to it.
Yeah, it's like they had this concern last year. Now they have this concern again. This like we thought we lost him, but maybe we didn't. We haven't really had an update. So I just feel like he's another one where I wouldn't really be wasting his bullets either. I'm just like, you know what, let him learn in the majors, and if he has an injury, if they recover and they come back. Like that's just what happens with young pitching nowadays. Like
I don't think much has really changed for Scott. I think that this is what they were kind of fearing, but I think they were just talking about with him is just rest because he's not used to it. And we've seen them throw guys into the fire and then basically burn them alive the next year or so or whatever. So I think that they've done an honest job with it. It's kind of been weird with Scott, definitely. But I think that you have more of a conditioned arm in Brandon Sproat, especially kind of how. And I know that he was more of a reliever in college, but I don't know. We've seen a lot of stability from him as to where he's been able to go deep into games, strike out a lot of batters, and that type of stuff really plays. And let me just say, whew, I definitely would not mind using my my best bullet. Let's just say that if it's a pitching bullet, because again, it's not even just like, oh, he's a good prospect. Let's bring him up here. Let's plug him in. He's the future. It's not that. It's how much time do I have until this guy gets Tommy John surgery? Like, that's literally how I look at it with Brandon Sproat. And I know it's weird to say. I get it, but every pitcher is going to get Tommy John surgery. It just happens. It's just going to happen. We say this all the time. Pitching is not a regular motion. If you're doing that more than 100 times in a game, throwing as hard as you are, the wear down is going to show up no matter what. And you can say that these guys are soft. These guys have no toughness like Tom Seaver did back in the 60s. But the reality is this game has accelerated, and these guys can't really stay healthy as much as they have been able to. And if you want to tell them to dial back the velocity, have fun giving up 6 home runs a game. That's all I can say. You know, that's literally how I look at it from a standpoint of Brandon Sproat, who also is not one who's fair to. He can limit away from the velocity and also blow you by with some wipeout stuff. So let's just say that I think that they could keep that bullet in their back pocket because I think that he should be in the equation this year. He should, especially with how you're looking at it from the rotation up here. If Senga didn't get hurt, I probably would have been saying this as a different situation. But I have never been one to really care about AAA, so get the dude up here. Get the dude up here if he pitches 2 solid games in AAA, because that's the best you're going to get. If you're expecting him to throw a 9-inning no-hitter in AAA, and then you can call him up, you're going to be waiting for a long time, and during that long time, he's going to get Tommy John surgery. Get him up here. That's it. Anything you want to add with Sproat? I mean, I think that's the only safety net that you're kind of looking at, but it's also not a safety net because he's so young and we don't know what he's going to do in the major leagues.
Yeah, I mean, I just think that starting pitching, again, is so important. It's so expensive that if you could have homegrown guys that are solid in your rotation, that really helps you out as a team when you're building a team. As far as like, okay, now we could actually go spend if you want to give Kyle Tucker, Santander, Juan Soto, whoever you want to name your star. Like it's so much easier to make those kind of moves when you're not committing so much to 5 guys in the rotation if your homegrown guys are very solid for you. So I feel like I just want to know what I have a little bit on that major league level because it looks so good in the minors that I'm just kind of curious. Okay, well, can he do it in the majors? And it's like just kind of getting a better idea of what my future plan is as well. I feel like it's just really helpful when you're and in any sport when you're just building teams.
I think that they've put themselves in the position where they do need a frontline type of arm, and I don't like being in this desperate position, especially with prospects. But if it's in your back pocket, it's in your back pocket. If you're continuing to get these blow-ups from Severino, if Minaya is your only consistent starter, it's not just a win or go home in the playoffs. Let's just say that, even if you get there. So I'm just saying, late call up. Is it possible that he's lining up to be called up September 1st, kind of like how we got with Ronnie Mauricio last year? Maybe. I hope it's not Brett Beatty who gets called up and that's it. So I'm hoping to see Brandon Sproat up here this year, especially with the condition that they're in. We still have not gotten an update on Senga. Little scary on that.
I mean, he's gonna be out for
we'll
Senga or Scott. You're talking.
Senga, also Scott too. We haven't heard anything.
No,
from
I
him
mean
either.
Senga's out for the season, so I don't really
Yeah.
count on him being a factor. Scott is the one I'm like I thought there was a chance he could come back, so we just haven't heard anything. So he's the one I'm a little more like, oh, what's going on there?
Yeah, that also could be a September equation as well with Scott. But we'll see what happens. Again, we say this like, oh, we didn't get an update from this guy, and then the next day we get an update. So maybe it's kind of like that. And there was one guy, and I want to get into that as of right now. Speaking of health, there is one guy that we heard from that we have not heard from in ages. Let's just say that. Let's get into the injury report, and then we'll continue on with today's show. Sean Reed-Foley, he pitched 25 pitches in a rehab assignment for AA Binghamton on Sunday. He is expected to return to the Mets bullpen later this week, but it looks like he most likely will have another outing, which might be tomorrow or the day after. We all know he has been on the 15-day IL due to a right shoulder impingement. And pretty much the same deal going on with Reed Garrett, who struggled in his AA Binghamton assignment on Sunday, but it looks like he'll need another assignment along. So he's pretty much going at the same pace as Sean Reed-Foley, as 2 pieces that could be added back into this bullpen to make it even deeper. And, of course, we know the right elbow inflammation, basically the Mets putting him on the back burner and destroying him. So hopefully he's able to ramp himself up. Now, some update of news from long-term injuries. Let's look at Ronnie Mauricio. He underwent a arthrosporic to basically remove scar tissue in his knee. Yeah, sure. On Tuesday, and he does remain on, even though this seems like a slowdown, he does remain on pace to return to baseball activities this coming offseason. Of course, he suffered the torn ACL during Dominican Winter League, so hopefully we get him back soon enough, as quickly as we can in spring training. We can't wait to see Ronnie Mauricio. Matt Allen. Who? That's right. Matt Allen threw a bullpen in PSL Friday. This guy underwent 2 Tommy John surgeries in the last 4 seasons.
Is there a video of this?
As well as no, there's a picture. There is a picture. So I don't know if it's doctored. I don't know if it's photoshopped. But he also had a nerve correction as well. 2 Tommy John surgeries in the past 4 years. And we all know he was a 3rd-round selection by the Mets in 2019, which is almost 5 years ago. And at the time, he was the highest 3rd-round overslot signing in history. Of course, that was eventually broken the next draft. But there were some high hopes for Matt Allen. And it's good to see him. I mean, I didn't know he existed. I thought he just did not exist whatsoever. And let's just say he's back. I'm impressed. Now, who knows? It's still unknown if he gets into a game or whatever. Maybe he finishes off the year with maybe a start or 2. Maybe he does, maybe he gets a bullpen appearance or something like that. But it's progress to what we knew last week about him, because we didn't hear shit about this guy for years. Okay, so it's good to see him back there. We know that. I mean, I don't know if it's true, because it was a photo. I don't know. There was like a brace on his, like a little bit of a brace on his like forearm or whatever. So we'll see what happens. I don't know, but it's good to see him out there. Let's just say that. Maybe he is a late bloomer. It would be quite the comeback story. Let's just say that.
It would.
Quite the comeback story.
It would be a great story.
He's still 23 years old, about to be 24, and he's only pitched 10 minor league innings. So it's going to be a while, but hopefully he can stay healthy. We're looking forward.
Starling Marte is looking like he's going to be getting some rehab games over in Port St. Lucie. So that's a big injury update as well, especially if Jesse Winker is just going to be worse than DJ Stewart. Having a guy actually hit in right field would be nice. And who knows? I don't know if he would fix this whole runners on base thing with the problems with scoring position. I also, while we're on the topic of offense, I would like to see him steal more bases too, other than maybe Bader.
That would be nice.
I think some more guys should be running to avoid all these double play problems that we've seen. Like there should be some more running happening.
Yeah, even they said Winker stole quite a few.
Yeah, he stole quite a few with the Nationals, and I think it's more so because he caught them by surprise. But he needs to get, like we always say, you got to get to first base before you could then do the rest of them,
and then also first. What is it, Lindor? He's like 7 away from the 30 stolen bases from last year, so got to get going, Francisco. Come on, or are they going to have your head on a stick, buddy? But even if we're talking about performance of players, I do want to zoom in a little bit and talk about Francisco Alvarez. Now, here's the deal. We all know how Alvarez, since the beginning of time, since he was birthed, we all know that he was going to make a huge impact on this major league roster. And he 100% has defensively. Overall, as a pitcher-catcher relationships, he has basically covered a lot of sins for a lot of pitching performances as well. Jose Quintana, I am looking at you. But with that has also come his offense, which has really been not great, kind of a step back from last year where he hit 25 home runs, even though we also had the streakiness last year. This year, with him offensively, it still overall has been good. But let's just say the overall numbers, the overall underlying metrics, not great. And I'm going to take basically this time to give a little bit of an overall look. And even though he is young, this is a youthful concern, so maybe it does get better. But since July 1st, it has really been rough for him. Let's just say that. If you like batting average, 203, not getting on base, not much power, 5 extra base hits ever since he came back from injury. It just really has not been the great production. And even though he had a few multi-hit games here and then, let's just say that the underlying metrics, I just want to say, it is kind of concerning to me, and I'm not really surprised. Let me just say that. And again, this is a catcher, so if you're getting a 105 bat from him, it's production. But when you look at it, he is pretty much below the league average in exit velocity. He is below the league average in EV90, which is his 90th percentile exit velocity. He has hit the ball hard before, max exit velocity of almost on 115. One of the main reasons has also been the launch angle to sweet spot percentage. We talk about those of batted balls with a launch angle in between 8 and 32, which is known as the sweet spot. He is in the first percentile, one of the league's worst. Squared up percentage as well has not been great, which they have added into Savant, which I also don't really know the full-on factors as to square up because they just added those things in. So I apologize for being a fraud there. Hitting the ball somewhat hard at a league average. Chasing pretty much the same as much as he was last year. A lot more discipline, lots of swing and miss there. But also we can look at it from quality of contact, which is the main problem that I have really had for a long time with Francisco Alvarez offensively, is the quality of contact sustaining to a point as to where he can be a consistent offensive contributor, and we all know that the power can pretty much, you know, it can cover a lot of sins. Let's just say that if you hit 25 homers, you hit 25 homers here. But if you're talking about him offensively, I have my concerns. Let's just say that, and and listen, I think Frank, you have every right to defend your guy here. I'm just going to tell you because he did hit the 25 home runs there. We've seen the power before, but when you talk about consistency, I do have a concern, and I'm not saying that there's no upside there, and I think that he will eventually become a better hitter, but there are some things I'm seeing from him, and I will get a little bit more deep dive into it, but I want to hear your thoughts where I'm like, that's not where I want him to be offensively right now. Like I feel like there's a few things that I want to see him do a little bit better that I'm really not seeing on a consistent basis. I don't know what you're seeing, but what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a few things to look at. Our buddy Top Bunk comes in here with one thing. It could be there's still be some injuries lingering, whether
Could
it's
be
the
injury.
hand or shoulder or both. Carlos Mendoza admitted that he has been playing hurt. He was playing with the bad shoulder. He got a few days off. I don't know if it's fully healed. I don't know if this is another Marte situation. I have no idea because they really didn't give too much details on what is going on with that shoulder. But I do think that there is also something to be said with the growing pains of a young player in any sport. I feel like I talked about it earlier, but he's another one of these guys who is struggling with those pitches on the outside corner, those breaking balls with the outside corner. So I feel like that's something that is just, they're all struggling with it. And I wonder, like, how would he be with some different coaching? And for the whole, for a lot of guys on the offense, I wonder how they'd be with some different coaching because there's just like a lot of struggles with not much adjustment. And I'm noticing now he's also struggling more with pitches that are running in on him, and he's chasing those as well, which was something that wasn't really happening. But baseball is a sport that, like, as soon as you mess up once in a certain area as a hitter, they're just going to keep attacking it. So now they've just been totally pitching him differently, like, oh, we can get him inside, we can get him outside, and he's just kind of all over the place right now and just totally lost. So there needs to be some adjustments made there as a young player, and really it's his second year. He's still like kind of his really first full year. So there still are some of those growing pains, especially when you consider his age. But what's like what I'm kind of falling back on is that in the first half of the season, he was batting 296 with an 844 OPS, and then the second half has been 159, 423. I look at someone like Brandon Nimmo, who's batting 148 in the second half. So, like, it could just be that there are multiple guys on this team having bad second half. So I feel like there's multiple factors. I'm not ready to panic quite yet. I think that because of his age, that there still is a lot of potential for growth and improvement, and just hoping to make some adjustments. I do wish that we did have a different hitting coach for the Mets because of how many guys have the same issue. I feel like some different coaching would definitely kind of benefit it. So between health, coaching, young player, and also just maybe being in a slump and just kind of the mental aspect of it, I feel like there's a lot of things that kind of prevent me from panicking. And then as far as like power concerns and things like that, he still has like an insane amount of power. It's just that, like you said, where he's hitting the ball, the quality of contact and actually squaring it up is the issue. Because if he does get that fixed with the power that he has naturally, that ball is going to fly and you are going to see home runs. I just think that right now there's a lot more just an approach issue that's happening, and just a lot of that chasing and just not being able to, and even like when he does hit the ball, not being able to just kind of do a lot with it, because even the times where he does hit it hard, a lot of times it's going into the ground. So it's just some of those things that really do need to be cleaned up. So I think a lot of it's more mental. There's some mechanical things. Like there are things that definitely can be fixed. I'm not ready to just be like, oh well, he's a catcher. He's never going to be a hitter. It's a bonus. Like I don't know. I don't think he's necessarily going to be like a 25 home run guy every year. But I do think that we can expect some better things from him. I don't think this is who he is. The guy that we've been seeing lately.
Yeah, I listen. I think that there's a lot of outrage concern as to where they kind of saw Alvarez as a middle of the order type of catcher, which is not something that is really. It's not very common. We usually see the catcher batting ninth, batting eighth. Alvarez is a middle of the order type of guy. Like, we know that he is well offensive oriented. When he came in here, we knew that the bat was ready for major league pitching. The issue that I have here, and the problem, is not really anything to do with his power, because I do believe that the power is still there. The power's there. It hasn't disappeared. You all gotta relax. How I look at it is the overall damage that he is doing. And when I say that, is there is a lot of opportunities that he gets in the strike zone, because there's not really many. There's not really many out of the zone. Like, he gets less than average of pitches out of the zone. There is a lot of pitches that he gets that he is kind of just limiting a lot of he is limiting the damage that he can possibly do. There has been plenty of pitches that I have seen, and maybe this is just the full-on eye test, and maybe I just need to look it back. But there's been many times where pitchers have put things on a tee for him, and he's slapping the thing the other way. So I feel like there's a reason as to why we're just not seeing his power being maximized when he's getting the opportunities to do so. And I get it, even if they're pitching around him or whatever, he's still hitting the ball somewhat hard, even though we've really seen a little bit of a decline in there. But I definitely had the main concerns that I did have going into this season, and even from last season. We just did not really see the best quality of contact. And the main reason as to why I can say that is, even if you're looking at the percentiles from the league or his percentiles as best as a player, the reason as to why I look at it is because quality of contact shows you one thing, and that being consistency. That's the best way to look at it from a consistent hitter. Best way to kind of determine luck as well as to if they're going to sustain this throughout or not. But when you're talking about a bat that is a power bat, like, he is not someone who is just here to, he's not just somebody here to just rack up his hits from the bottom of the order and table set for the top of the order. He's the middle of the lineup guy. So I really feel like he is playing with power that he has, but he's not using it enough. And that's the main reason as to why some people are saying, "Oh, well, he's turning into Javi Baez," or it looks like his bat is too heavy for, like. There's a main reason as to why I look at it like that, is because I'm seeing some of the swings that he's taking against some of these uncompetitive pitches in the strike zone that are put on a tee for him, and I'm seeing this guy just like try to angle it and go through a one hand follow through. What I know from Francisco Alvarez, since he has been a Mets top prospect for a while, I know that if he sees that, he should be destroying that thing down the left field line. He should be destroying it. And I understand it. Like, listen, with ground balls come with the uppercut or whatever. But I feel like he has been able to develop a little bit more discipline at the plate as to where he can find his pitch and he can destroy it. It has nothing to do with his power as a concern, because I know it's there. No, 100% know it's there. It has nothing to do with, him pulling the ball or him going the opposite way. It has nothing to do with that. It's the amount of damage that he should be doing to pitches that he is not doing damage to. That's the main concern that I have with it. Anything you want to add?
Yeah, I mean, my question is just kind of like, even with as bad as he's been in the second half, we look at the totality of his numbers. Last year, he hit 25 home runs, but overall, technically, because of he wasn't walking, his only hits were home runs. He was technically a below league average bat at 96.
Yes.
Whereas this year, home runs are down by 20, and he's at an OPS of 114. So that's kind of one of those things where you're looking at and you're like, okay, do we care more about the home runs, or do we care more about like just overall offensive production, actually taking good at bats and things like that? Because I feel like he's also, and this also goes to being a young player, it could be a bit of an identity crisis where he's still trying to figure out like, what kind of hitter am I? Am I a guy who does want to go more opposite field, get on base more often, or am I a guy that just wants to go out there and hit a ton of home runs? Like, it's tough. I feel like that's also part of trying to figure yourself out as a hitter, as far as like what do I want to do? I'm at the plate. I feel like a lot of it is like, what's my plan? And again, some of that goes to coaching, philosophies of front offices. Like I feel like there's a lot of factors, but it's like, even though we feel like, oh, he's worse than last year because last year he hit so many home runs, it's like, no, even with him being absolutely terrible in the second half, it's like he's still technically better. So I feel like that's another part that's
also
kind
kind
of
of
weird when you're
league
looking at
average
him.
production too. Let's also put that into perspective as well, because like 115. I mean, this would probably be 95 last year or 2 years ago or something
Yeah.
like that. But with him, I feel like there's opportunities that he's not taking. Like that's how I look at it. I'm not talking about this guy needs to swing for the fences every goddamn time. No, I'm not saying that. But when you get a pitch that is your pitch, I've seen him stare at it before. I've seen him slap it to the opposite field. So, does it look like we have breaking news coming in here? I don't know.
I mean, kind of. It just says that Billy Bean passed away. So,
Whoa!
yeah, rest in peace to him.
Wow!
Yeah.
Holy shit!
Hmm.
Wow!
Leukemia.
All right. Well,
Oh.
wow, wow, that's crazy. Okay. Well, rest in peace to Billy Bean,
Yeah,
the great
definitely.
one, the creator of Moneyball, one of the best movies that anybody has ever seen. Um, but anyways, that's crazy. So I mean, if we
Yeah.
want to shift that conversation to that for a second, let's just say we all know that he was in the conversation as a
Mm-hmm.
possible Mets executive.
Yep.
Maybe that was the main reason as to why there was a lot of hesitance there. And obviously, I don't want to make that completely about the Mets, because it's more about Billy Bean there, and we all know the contributions he made to baseball. So that's rough. That's a quite a loss to baseball. Let's just say that.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, he's had like such impact as far as like changing the game, but even as unfortunately, like this last year, he was really struggling with health things. But uh, they really, even after his time with Oakland, MLB had him do like a lot of good things. He was very big. Like they have it right here. Like his title was MLB
Yeah.
Senior VP for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. So he was a guy that just trying to grow the game and just trying to have everyone be involved in it. Like he's just been a guy that like it's been nothing but positive, and like everyone has such great things to say because the overall impact that he's had on the sport. So, definitely condolences and best wishes to his family. And he was a guy that, yeah, obviously has history with the Mets before even being
Yeah.
in the front office and all that. So he's just a guy that they have a lot of
Yeah.
ties to him, but definitely thoughts are with his family. So it's just sad, especially his age too. Like
Yeah.
gone too
That's
soon
young.
for sure.
Yeah. Yep. Age 60. I mean, that's
Yeah.
you have guys who are living into their 90s now, so that's young. Let's just say that. Apologies to derail the conversation from that, because these guys, again, for those of you listening on audio in the future, these are done live. So when news drops, it happens. So that is a big loss to the baseball community, Major League Baseball, and we all know the connections that he had to the Moneyball era with the A's, of course, and we all know that he was also a member of the Mets in
Yeah,
'86
and
before they went with
even
Lenny
like
Dykstra.
and his Moneyball philosophy, Sandy Alderson learning under him, who then came to the Mets and tried to bring that approach, and then the Mets are in the World
Yeah,
Series and things like that. Like a lot of it's just like being a trendsetter, just a guy, a
yeah,
pioneer, where like you really just changes the way the sport is looked at. So
yeah.
within the Mets, there definitely is just he's very relevant, even if he wasn't actually
Yes.
running the team. It's like his philosophies were still very important to not only the Mets, but just a lot of teams.
Yeah, I think that there was a lot of impact, of course, when we talk about it, and it's not really as to whether you liked the Billy Bean philosophy or not, whether because when he did it with the A's, obviously we they didn't get very far, but obviously it came as more of the subject to the Red Sox and how they were able to do that with the whole stuff with the whether you're talking about Theo Epstein or talking about other guys in this game. It really was a huge impact as to where it really branched out. And you know that and for those of you saying that this is the same person. Billy Bean was the executive for the A's, and also as well. And listen, that's another thing that where he branched off of it from Bill James as well. And there's still things from Bill James. He was one of those guys who kind of transferred it from these branches as to where the analytics, those goddamn analytics people ruined baseball. So that's a big loss. And again, condolences to his family, everyone around it that we knew that he wanted to spend a lot more time with, and that's probably the main reason as to why he kind of stepped down. But to kind of, I don't want to derail this from a kind of a sad loss here, but let's talk a little bit more of sad as to maybe pathetic. Let's talk about Pete Alonso, because I think that whether we talk about this topic, there's going to be controversy if he continues to play like the way he has. And it has kind of been taken notice a little bit, not just even by the manager, but we also got a tweet from SNY as well saying, he has not done well with runners in scoring position, which is a big thing. It is a big thing from SNY to go after one of the top guys, because we really see them homer a lot of guys from the Mets, as to where, even though we support them as well, there's been points where fair criticism should have been made, and it wasn't. With Pete Alonso, he was moved down to the 5th position yesterday. We don't know if that's going to stay, and we saw some notes from
he's batting cleanup
Mendoza,
today,
which I'll
so
get
it's
into.
over.
What?
He's batting cleanup today, so the 5th thing.
Oh, so he is
so
batting
far
cleanup
only for one
today,
day.
and maybe there's a possibility that it happens again. But I do want to bring up these comments from Pete Alonso, and there is one that I'll end it with. But even though it is at the top of this graphic, he talked about the current state of the Mets in the playoff race. Of course, he said that we've been playing good ball overall. We're in a situation where we're just trying to win as many baseball games as possible. We're in a strong contention for the playoff spot, and that's where we want to be. Pretty simple going forward. We also got some comments from Carlos Mendoza, which it's obviously confirmed what Frank just said. I just wanted about moving him to the 5 hole, of course, saying that I just wanted to see what it looks like in a game today. I don't know that we'll go consistently. Maybe tomorrow when we're facing a lefty and Pete's back in the 4 hole. So that's just kind of like a little bit of a rearrange, but we all know that Pete has struggled. So, moving down in the lineup was something that you could put into consideration. Now, of course, with SNY, like I said, with that post, like I said, with that post of him not being well, not really producing with runners in scoring position this year. He said about his decline in offensive production this season, basically just saying, I'm on pace for close to 40 homers. I was an all-star this year. To beat myself up or be frustrated, it's really no use. I'm really excited for the end of the year where we get to play winning baseball. I'm happy with what I've accomplished this year so far. Okay. Now, this comment definitely sprayed quite an outrage from a lot of Mets fans on social media, and for good reason. Let me just say that. Let me just say first, I'm not trying to say this in defense of Pete, to be honest. We know that Pete has said a lot of stupid things. We know that. We've talked about it before. We know that he's here for his bat. That's it. He can hit a baseball very far. He can hit it hard. And he can hit a lot of home runs. That's why he's here. He's not here for his brain. We know that. This, to me, and I will go right straight to you when I say this. So get ready to respond, Frank. This, to me, is the most tone-deaf thing I've ever heard from Pete Alonso his entire time he was here.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, it does come across a little selfish, especially that first remark. I feel like, especially to be like, I was an all-star this year. And especially like you said, it's
You didn't
tone
play
deaf.
like one.
Yeah, it's tone deaf in the sense where it's like every single Met fan knows that there's at least two Mets that should have gotten it over you. You shouldn't have been an All Star. It should have been Nemo or it should have been Francisco Lindor. So the fact, and that's a individual award. That's an award that anybody gets, regardless of how bad they're. Especially if he was the lone representative. The Mets could have not won a single game all year, and he still could have been an All Star. So that is a pure individual accolade that has nothing to do with overall team performance. And home runs also have kind of not all that much to do with team performance as much as hitting with runners on base. And he's been probably the worst on the team with runners on base. I would be so much more happy with Pete Alonso having a bunch of RBIs and not a lot of home runs. So I just think that it's so crazy to me that like this is what he's focused on and this is why he's not mad. Like I don't get it. I feel like him batting under 200 with runners in scoring position and constantly squandering opportunities, like that should be a sense of frustration. And what's kind of weird to me in his defense is that I watch it. Like that's the thing that like it kind of annoys me about him is that he must think that we're not smart. Because if you actually pay attention to what's going on, when he messes up with runners on base, when he swings at something dumb, how many times have I seen him walking in the dugout, cursing to himself? How many times have I seen him slam the bat down? How many times have I seen him just overall talking to himself when he's not coming through with runners in scoring position? So he is frustrated about it. He is beating himself up about it. I'm watching you do it, Pete. Why are you saying that, oh, I'm not beating myself about it? We're watching you do it. We've seen it with our own two eyes. So why are you lying when if you're someone actually pays attention to the team and what goes on, you can see that you're actually beating yourself up about it. So all the comments are just wrong. They're all just wrong. And he also, like, the fact that he has to be pressing, you know what I mean? Because, like, he's like the pure example of this team, of a guy where it's like, these guys do well when there's nobody on base, but as soon as people on base, they're a totally different player. That's him. With nobody on, 838 OPS. With men on, then you're looking at, like, scoring position, 689 OPS. Like, it's just, he's a totally different guy. 141 bat with runners, with the bases empty, compared to 85 bat with runners in scoring position. He's like a totally different player. He goes from elite to below average. Like, so how do you not tell me that you have to be pressing, because you're a totally different player when there's runners on base? So this has to be something you're thinking about, because that's what the criticism is about with Met fans. Like, we don't really care how many home runs he ultimately finishes with. Yes, he's on pace for 40. He's going to hit over 30. Great. But what we're really concerned about is like, dude, you're not coming through when we need you most with runners on base. That's where it really is as a cleanup hitter. Like, that's where we need you for. That's what we need you to do. And he's not doing it. And that's where our frustration is. And clearly that's where his frustration is, because those are the big at bats. Those are the important at bats. So we're watching him beat himself up. He's like, I'm not beating myself up about it. I was an all-star this year. Like, come on. Like, we're not that dumb. Like, you gotta, like you said, it is tone deaf for a multitude of reasons. Like, he's just not saying the right thing based off what the actual criticism is right now.
Yeah, I kind of look at it from how he looks at it is that I don't know what it is from, like, I don't know if it was the old regime or like guys who were brought up. It wasn't something, I don't know, maybe it was between the Manaya, between the other guys that were like with Sandy. I don't know what it was. But here's the problem that I don't know if it's just, we really have just seen like the same type of, I don't know how you want to say it, like, I don't know, mantra for me, like how I look at it with, I don't know, Jeff and Pete. Like, I feel like they don't really look at anything really that's in front of them, and they kind of just, dust it off with like their accolades and what they have done before. And like, I am really someone who does not give a shit about your single season accolades of how you do these things individually.
And especially
That's fine.
previous accolades too. Means
I don't
nothing
care.
For
Like, I just
for what's
don't.
happening right now.
And let's like, and even it's more of a joking manner when we talked about it, and that's why I didn't give a shit about James McCann getting an All-Star appearance 2 years ago, 2 years before he signed with the Mets. I didn't care. Like, I did not care whatsoever, right? The way to just say that, and we've seen him say stupid things before, but it all was made up with how he has been able to produce on the field. He has not been producing on the field. So everything that he says, it's shut the fuck up, Pete. Don't talk. Absolutely, do not talk. Let your playing or non-player can do the talking for you as to if you want to get paid or not this year. So it's either like, I don't care if you're on pace for 40 homers, which you're not, by the way. He's not. He's like 34. So I don't know if that's just the Florida education, but here's how I look at it. You have not come through when we've needed you to come through this year. So you are going to get that type of backlash. I don't care if you beat yourself up about it or not. I understand the mental game. I understand that there is a mental game here. I get it. So to beat yourself up like Jeff McNeil does, maybe not for everyone. Fine. The problem is that he takes this into no consideration. He takes this into absolutely no account. And I don't know, maybe he does off in the clubhouse. We don't know what he does. But from that answer I heard, I don't care, if I don't produce, as long as I'm producing individually, that's all that matters to me. And, 23 home runs, great. But as someone who's made it an answer before to say that, he wants to be drunk off his ass in a parade float, well, you're not showing it to me on the field that you do. So you can tell me this. You can tell me that, well, this is better, or this is this and this is that. I've done this, I've done that. All right, well, show me that guy that you were your entire career. Because I know that you still have talent. I know that you can still hit home runs. You may not be the guy from 2019, which looks like pretty much his peak year. Like, he peaked in his rookie year. Like, that's it. It's statements like this that maybe he doesn't realize it. Whether I'm calling it tone deaf or not, it's statements like this that punches your ticket out of here. If you don't want to be, if he wants to punch his ticket out of here, if he does not want to be here in Queens next year, you're doing a really good job at it. Whether you want it, whether you look at it like that or not, I'm just saying he's doing a really good job at saying, I don't want to be here. There's probably some other thing out there. And I know that's not true. I know it's not true. Because Pete Alonso has said multiple times, over and over again, whether he remembers it or not, I want to be here. But for someone to just say, with how frustrating you have been to watch with runners in scoring position as the main cleanup hitter, the cleanup hitter who's supposed to drive in runs, be the best situational hitter on the team, you've been the worst situational hitter on the team, and then to just back that thing up and say, well, I was an all-star. I'm going to hit 40 home runs this year. Shut up.
Yeah.
Shut the fuck up. I don't want to hear that. Disgusting. It's a disgrace, to be honest, to me. That's just ridiculous.
Yeah, and I think too, like, it's been what he's done in the past when it comes to driving and runners. Like, you talk about that rookie season, drove in 120, 2022 drove in 131, last year drove in 118. Right now he's at 59. And we talked about, like, the leadoff hitter having more run driven than you, and like you said, the bottom of the order has been, like, the number 9 hitter is better driving and runs than you. So it's like, Everyone else does it, but and this is like supposed to be what you do, and you're just not doing it. And the thing that I'm worried about, like going forward, is that he's had such a bad season. He's not going to get the contract that him and Boris wanted, that they were going for. It's just not going to happen. Like I feel confident in saying that. So what's going to happen, and this is a scenario that I can see, is we've seen with these Boris clients, especially this past year, not getting the money they want, and then when they sign, it is so late in the offseason. And what's going to happen is that the Mets are going to try to keep Pete Alonso. And I feel like they told you that by not trading him. So they are going to try to keep him. But if he's not taking the offer that they're giving him and he's just playing it out, this is something that's just going to be kind of luring over the Mets' head throughout the entirety of the offseason. And I wonder how much it's going to affect them as far as how they want to make their moves. It's like, are we going under the assumption that Pete is taking this contract? Are we going under the assumption that we still have to have this money reserved in case he does eventually say yes? What I'm afraid is going to happen is that he's going to settle for a short-term deal with opt-outs. And I that's the thing that I really don't want, because I feel like the same thing is going to happen where he's going to put pressure on himself again, and then we're just going to have the same thing over and over. It's like I either want him to take a long-term deal with the Mets that isn't worth a lot of money or not too many years, like a reasonable deal, or just don't take the deal. I don't want him on a short-term deal because I feel like he's going to do the same thing. He's going to press and be thinking about his next contract, and you're looking at the same thing. I want to see him with peace of mind, getting paid as a guy who does like 30 to 40 home runs with 100 runs driven in, whatever. Normal contract for that kind of player. Not this max money thing, not Freddie Freeman, not Matt Olson, none of that. So even though Matt Olson's out of
Haven't been
this
that
year
in the
too,
last 2 years.
but he's not Freddie Freeman. That's ultimately what it comes down to. So and like I said before, the fact that he's 30, like you always have to keep that in mind. You're doing a long-term deal, guys. Ready to hit 30, so there's definitely just a lot of overall red flags. But I'm just kind of worried that it's going to hang over the Mets' head. It's going to kind of prevent them from doing everything they want because they're waiting on Pete. Or he takes a short-term deal, or he takes a short-term deal, and we see the same thing happen next time he's in a Met uniform.
Yeah, it's a possibility that does happen because we've seen that be a trend with a lot of the Boris clients that have held out like this. And this is a good point from M. Easy saying that, but if he is this delusional about his current season, imagine how delusional him and his agent, who, head up in the clouds, will be during negotiations in the offseason. That's a good thing to look at because when you think about it, whether it's true or not, there was 7 years, $158 million on the table for him. I don't know if that's true, completely true, because we don't know. Stearns did not say it straight up. That was a source that said that he rejected that. Is he going to get more than that on the market? No. You're not. You're not going to get it. And listen, and if he's looking for that, if he's looking for $200 million as compared to $158 million, here's how I look at it at the rate that we're going in this prove-it year that we're going. If you want more than $158 million, which, you know what, I'd be willing to, give it to him. Give him the same offer that you had. Go ahead. Because you're going to have to overpay no matter what if you want to keep him. Go ahead. If they are so determined that he is going to be that guy, be that guy. Give him the 7-158. If you want more than that, have fun finding it somewhere else. Go ahead. And to be honest, I would probably go a little bit less years. Like what we're saying, the same AAV, what is it, 3 years, $70 million, something like that. Like that could also be in consideration too. You're going to get QO'd. So there's going to be a lot more hesitation for people to give up draft picks for you. You're going to get QO'd that way. So there you go. And good luck getting $200 million after being the worst player with runners in scoring position on the entire team. Go ahead. Have fun. And if he does get that money, good for him. Good for him. I'm glad that you do. The Met, again, and I've talked about this all the time, the Mets haven't won anything for me to justify being desperate to keep Pete Alonso or being desperate to keep Jeff McNeil around or being desperate to keep this guy or desperate to keep that guy. No. If you want to go, if you want to be out the door, go ahead. Walk out that door. And you've
also,
already
if
given
you
us,
sit-
and listen,
yeah.
you've already given us the hint that you want your money because you hired Scott Boras. So
Yeah.
I don't want to hear he likes being here. He LFGM. He's done so much for. You want your money. We know you want your money. So if you can get that money somewhere else, have fun. Have fun. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, we'll
Cut you
see
off
kind
there.
of where his priorities are. If he's a guy that, like, this is the organization that drafted him, developed him, do you want to stay in what's now your new hometown? Or do you want to just go, who gives you the most money? Even if it's a team that's absolutely awful. Like, could happen. Yeah, I mean, not that Houston's. I mean, Houston's a good team. I could see Houston give him like a nice offer, or the Cubs, because the Cubs are weird. Like, I could definitely see the Cubs give him like a big offer, and maybe it goes there. We've heard them linked to him in the past. Houston linked to him in the past. So, like, there are teams that want him, like Seattle. Like, so I can see a team giving him a good offer, but I feel like the Mets, you have to be smart. Like, I like to keep him, but I'm not gonna just completely overpay it. And like you said, I must do everything to keep him. I'm not at that point. Like, I'd like to, but I'm not going to go crazy to make sure I do. And I'm not going to let it. And this where I'm getting at is that I can't let that determine what I do in the off season. As far as like, okay, well, I got to make sure I have this money set aside to peel on, so I can't go get Santander. I can't go get Corbin Burns or like something like really important. Like, no, I got to make sure it goes to Pete. Like, no, they really got to make sure that everyone has their priorities set.
Yeah, at one point, we thought that this offseason, because he's going to free agency, we know he is, that it would be centered around Pete Alonso. Now I'm not so sure. Now I don't think so. And I know that that's tough to hear from a lot of people. Is like, this guy's been around here, he's homegrown, is whatever. But I mean, baseball should not be based on emotions. It just shouldn't. It's a business. It's heartless. It really is. I mean, if Freddie Freeman could leave, so could Pete. It could happen. And I say this also wholeheartedly, as I say, for everyone. I want Pete Alonso to be the guy. I want him to be the guy. But if he's not showing me he's that guy, so be it. He's just telling me he's that guy. Yeah, hit 40 homers. I'm an all-star this year. I'm satisfied with what I've done. I mean, listen, you've been in this league for 5 years here, man. We know that you're the top run producer on this team. You got to do it again here. You got to do it again. And he's not doing it. That's the main fault as to where, yeah, maybe he is still producing. He's still been a plus bat this year. Still. But when we're talking about the situation of him driving in runs and producing, I mean, come on. I mean, he's even being chested up by Lindor and Nimmo at one point for home runs. So that pays for 40 home runs. That is so fantastic. I mean, and maybe is it? I mean, I did get some comments about this on Twitter yesterday about this whole comment that he made, saying, "Is this just him being a Boris mouthpiece? Is this him just doing that?" But again, I'm just saying, let's not act like we haven't heard Pete say something stupid before. We haven't heard him say anything stupid before. He has. And it all has kind of been made up by his production. I've always said that as long as he hits 40 to 50 home runs every year, if you're talking about him just driving in runs, 4,100 every year, sustained production, as long as he does that, he can wear a tutu for all I care. I don't care what he does. But he's not doing it. So then it goes to the measures of, okay, shut up. Just shut up. Don't say anything. I understand. He's one of the leaders of this team, and he's supposed to be one of the guys that makes comments. We know that Francisco Lindor faces the media head on every single time. But those types of comments, that's not what a leader does. That is, you can't say that. I don't care if he's below the IQ points or above the IQ points. I don't care. You cannot say that, especially from what is very, very noticeable on the field. Like you just said, beating himself up on about it, and also just the overall numbers that he has. Whether you're looking at it from an advanced look or just the basic look, batting under 200 with runners in scoring position when you are the cleanup hitter is an issue. No matter how you put it, that's an issue. We expect that type of stuff from Tyrone Taylor, who is, a margins guy, but not Pete Alonso, who's been your main bat. And I get it. He's done so much for this franchise, but that so much for the franchise has not resulted in the franchise winning. So we've put ourselves in this position where we need to see him produce or he's taking the next ticket out of here. And we talked about the other options. Maybe it's the Giants, the Cubs, the Yankees. Maybe it's the Phillies who moves Bryce Harper back to the outfield if he feels like he can do that. At the end of the day, he's not producing. We need to just see results from him. This is your walk year. And not to mention some of the underlying metrics, little concerning. Let's just say that. But I know that the power is still there. But, when you're late on every fastball, swinging at sliders in the other batter's box, that's not going to be productive. It's not going to be productive. It just isn't. If anything you want to add, and then we'll wrap this thing up with studs and duds. But
No,
I mean, it's just that is just tone deaf. I don't care how you word it. I don't care how much you've done for this team. I don't have any heartfelt compliments for you of saying, oh yeah, this is completely true, because it's not.
Well, yeah, I mean, and like I said, there's just obvious lying there because I've watched him beat himself up. So why is he saying he's not? Like I've watched you do it. So
yeah,
I don't like lying when it's like so blatant.
Yeah. And also speaking of other Mets news, former Mets news, we're talking about Wilmer Flores is done for the year with a knee injury. So that's rough. We all know that he is not the lower body guy, so that's definitely a concern. But as we continue to go through the sad news, let's get into the positives and some of the negatives. Studs and duds, of course. We're talking about this stretch of games, which is a 3-game series with the Angels and, of course, the makeup game in St. Louis. So these 4 games, studs and duds, I'll swing it right back to you, Frank. Who do you got as your stud of this stretch? So series plus game.
Yeah, I mean, I'll give it to Sean Manaea. That was again, that was a big start. It was a game the Mets really needed, based off of just losing the series against the Angels. The head-to-head matchup with the St. Louis Cardinals is the team that was, right behind you. Right now tied with the Pirates, but right behind you in the standings. You got the tiebreaker over them, so that's something really big in this tight race. So for Manaea to come through, give you those 7 innings, and it's in a tough stretch of games for the Mets. Like even though the Angels aren't a great team, even though the Rockies don't have a great record, all these different time zones and moving all over the country, like it's gonna make it tough on everybody. So having someone really come through on back-to-back outings as well, and just kind of work deep into the game, getting the strikeouts, finally not walking batters, and like we said, just kind of giving us hope. And it's like, okay, at least hopefully we have this guy for the playoffs in the rotation. Like, at least we have somebody that we could trust. That's really big, especially with the Senga injury down. Seeing Manaea step up, that could be a real big thing. So I'm proud of him, and I hope he keeps it going, because it was a big game for the team in general. So I'm just really glad he was able to come through.
At one point, he had a lot of stretches in Oakland where he was really untouchable. And right now, it seems like he's hit that stride as to where, he locates something fairly well. Like that fastball that he has, it just explodes out of it. It pretty much explodes out of his hands up, as a riser from the left side, which pretty much looks like 97, 98 to a lot of hitters, especially with what type of hitter they are. But, he's on a roll right now. And like I said, like when you're talking about stability and long-term investment, I would put Manaea as the number one guy to retain if you're looking to retain somebody on this team. But that depends on how it goes down the stretch. But let's go with his former A's teammate as well as my stud. How about Paul Blackburn? I mean, that was a really good debut. And again, we don't know what we're going to get the next start that he has, which I believe is in Colorado. So
yeah.
We'll see if he misplaces anything. So, but overall, I mean, we've seen the Mets trade and claim a lot of guys who come into the rotation of the bullpen, and automatically we have problems. This was no sweat. This was no sweat. Gave you 6 innings. It seemed like he said he really enjoyed throwing to Alvarez, which is good to know, of course. And, there's another year of control there. So there's another piece of rotational stability that we've talked about. He's not perfect. Let's just say he's not explosive. But let me just say, for a guy that doesn't throw as hard as he does, the man was throwing darts the other day. He was dotting everything. And there's a possibility that maybe this doesn't sustain to better teams, but I'm just saying that as a 5 starter, that is solid. It is solid stuff. And let's just say when you have a kitchen sink like that, more weapons, more kills, like we've always said. And that's something that the Mets have been able to kind of enforce with a lot of these pitchers. But overall consistency, like even Manaea said, just the overall consistency where, you're getting a sub 4 or a 4.5 ERA type of guy from the back end of the rotation. That's good. That's good. That's what you need to maintain the rotation as compared to somebody like Tyler McGill who can't even get out of the 4th inning. So,
yeah. And I think even we look at his start against Minnesota, seeing Severino then get bombed, like I think that also shows you, like, you put, even though one's left hand, one's right hand, so you'll see like some different platoon changes and things like that. But overall, like for Manaea to shut them down compared to Severino getting bombed, like I think it also shows you just like, no, regardless of the talent of the opposing team, like this guy could still be productive for you. So I feel like, the Cardinals, like, they're not great offensively, but they still have some guys. Like they still have plenty of quality players. So for him to still put together that start, and again, there was just a lot of pressure. I just feel like there was a game they really needed after losing those 2 heartbreaking ones in a row. Like they really needed that.
Yeah, and we'll see how the strength and opponent fizzles out, because we do know we have that that stretch in, is it September, where we're facing the Diamondbacks and Padres, and like there's a good stretch.
Of Phillies.
Yeah,
Even though Phillies haven't been playing
a lot
well,
of Phillies.
there's
So we'll find out really quick how some of these back end pieces do, if they're able to go deep into the game, because that's kind of just what we want from them. 3-run ball, 6 innings, 7 innings. That's what we really want from them. So that's what we want from Blackburn. That's what we were able to get against an Angels team that's not great, but again, great first debut. You can't really lie on that. But let's go to duds. There's quite a few that you can stick out here.
Yeah, even though I want to give it to one guy, I'm actually going to give it to someone else, and that's going to be Quintana. The walks against the Angels just drove me absolutely nuts. I mean, we've talked about it so many times with the walks and these pitchers, but again, especially when you're a starting pitcher, it's like I feel like you have an obligation to your bullpen to work deep into games, and with the amount of walks and 3-ball counts and you just the long at bats constantly, you're only able to go 5 innings, and he threw almost 100 pitches to do it. So now it's like these other guys have to work back-to-back days. You're lucky Ottavio had to go down, but it's like, okay, now we have to use Phil Maton and we have to use Danny Young again. So it's like, and now these guys aren't available for the next day when Manaea's going. Like, just you put all your other guys in your rotation and in your bullpen in a tough spot when you pitch like this. And he only gave up 3 runs, but the amount of traffic on the bases, like, it could have been more if the Angels weren't so bad. And again, the fact that you walked 4 guys against a team that is so bad is just flat out unacceptable. And it happens far too often with him. So it's just very frustrating that things like this continue to happen. And he's just not a guy I have no confidence in. And I feel like he's someone that, because of the high pitch counts, the amount of base runners, he's one of those guys who is really like, you don't know what you're going to get. Does he escape the jams and get out of it and all in all puts together a quality start? Or do these teams actually cash in and then it's a bad start? Like, he's the one where it's like there is such a small margin for error because of the amount of traffic he puts on the bases, and he's not gonna work deep into the game, that it's just a guy you can't trust at any time. You just never feel confident ever, because it's just like, I'm like, oh my god, another 3-ball count, like we got another guy on base here. It's like, oh, he just got out of it. Like, it feels like it's like we're getting ahead, but now we're behind. Like, it's just so many at bats. It's like, oh my god, he fouled off another pitch. Is he going to put him away? Like, what are we gonna have to do here? Like, even when he pitches well, you feel like he pitched bad. Like it's just not a fun watching experience at all. It's brutal to watch.
Yeah, it's not even brutal to watch, but it's also boring. I've talked about this
Yes.
before.
Oh,
He's
very
such a boring pitcher to watch. And the fact that he's lining up to start in the game that I'm probably going to go to later on next week, that's great. So I'll be snoozing in my seat. It's just, he's a turd. Like literally, I don't even know how to even say it anymore. You literally watch this guy aggressively sweat through 5 innings, and you just think of as like, this is taking time off my life. Let's just say that. And it's just, he's not explosive. He's not fun. He's just a body out there right now. And I'm sure that when I say that, he's going to turn in 8 scoreless the next time he pitches. I'm sure he will.
I hope so.
I hope
Please
he
do.
does, because that'll help us win. But
Yeah.
are we confident that he's going to do that? Like, I mean, come on. Like, this is just, it's getting ridiculous. And he's one of the guys, including him and Ottavino, I'm waiting for the day. Those are the types of guys I'm just like, I cannot wait until these guys are gone. Like, it's just not productive to have them here anymore. But we have no choice, like we've said, with the injuries to the rotation. He's out there every 5 days, and we have no really any options as of right now past the trade deadline. So Pete Alonso, easily, I mean, he hit that 1 home run in the first game of the series. Great, tied the game, or gave the Mets the lead or whatever. The runner was not in scoring position, so he was able to do that. But other than that, did absolutely nothing, pretty much counterproductive whatsoever. Chasing a lot of pitches, and I think that since the All-Star break, he's hit better, but nothing really to make a difference. Still not like driving in runs whatsoever, and not producing the way that he should be. And then also that comment that was ridiculous. I got to add extra salt to that, because that was just horrendous. I really just have never seen him. I've seen him say stupid things, but I've never seen him say something that tone deaf. That was just awful. Like that really just put me in a place as to where, is this guy actually serious going forward, or do we just have another guy that he was good at one point, but we're cutting ties, and it's deteriorating over time. And that really definitely puts you in that perspective. I really do. I'm really I'm frustrated after that. That was a lot to take in. Let's just say that. But other than that, I think we'll wrap it up here past the 2-hour mark. A lot was said. A lot was not said. I'm sure there's some other stuff that we could probably go over, but 2 hours is the limit here. But for those of you who are in here right now, for those of you watching on playback, for those of you listening on audio in the future, thank you guys so much for tuning in. Make sure to subscribe to the Mets Weekly channel if you have not already. Turn on those post notifications to not miss the live recordings of these podcasts that are regularly up on Sunday and Tuesday, depending on kind of how all of these series line up. It might be Friday, which is going to be the next episode for the Colorado series, which how that lines up especially. So that is a little frustrating with how we kind of line those things up, but regularly it is Sundays and Thursdays for when these series ends, as well as the audio version that drops on all your listening platforms at 9 a.m. the following day. Make sure to follow us on TikTok and on X. Frank's post games as well after every single game, which will be also up after today's Rockies game.
Yeah,
as
we'll
well.
see you
So,
later tonight.
Yeah, see you guys later tonight. I will see him as well, because I'm going to be chopping him up, and follow everyone individually as well, including our co-host Andrew, who's not here today. But other than that, even though they drive us crazy, we're still here till the end. Let's go Mets, and we will see you guys next time.